Hi ladies, welcome back to another video. I have some questions for you. What does your bank account look like right now? Are you living paycheck to paycheck, or maybe you're struggling to get ahead financially? You can break that cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. You can avoid debt. You can build your savings and faithfully steward the money that God has given you. The Bible has so much to say about how we manage our money, and we need to do that with wisdom and diligence, all while we trust the Lord and live with contentment no matter what we earn. In today's video, we're walking through biblical principles in how to live below our means, how to invest and save more money, all with a biblical approach to handling our money, and with a mindset of simple and intentional living. So first up, don't use credit cards. I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this one because everyone's like, you need credit cards to buy property, you need credit cards for this, you need credit cards for that. But with credit cards, you're essentially borrowing money from the bank, and not having a credit card ensures that you're not gonna go into debt or have any type of credit card debt, which is one of the big nemesis to living paycheck to paycheck. If you can't afford it and then you put it on your credit card, you are actually using money you don't have, and you're not guaranteed to get your next paycheck. You might lose your job. And I know there's many of you watching who do use credit cards in healthy ways, which is really great. If you are struggling to control spending, if you do any type of emotional spending, or if you just spend everything you earn and you put it on your credit card, I highly encourage you to get rid of your credit card. If you have credit card debt, definitely pay that debt off immediately, as fast as you can, and get rid of those credit cards. Proverbs 22:7 says that the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the lender. And then Romans 13 verse 8 says, owe no one anything except to love each other, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. So the next thing to save money is to live below your means. This one is huge for savings, because if you constantly spend what you're making, you will never save money. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, you are not living below your means. In America, we live with constant consumerism. We always need more, we always need better, we always need the new tech gadget. We always need a better home, we need a better job, we need more money. There's so many things we think we need. I want to sit on this one for a moment, because one of the heart issues with consumerism is discontentment. Ladies, we think we need more clothes, we think we need more money, we need the newest thing, the newest tech, the newest whatever. But I actually want to read some verses from 1 Timothy. Paul is writing to Timothy here about how to conduct oneself in the church or in the house of God, and what those things are. And in 1 Timothy 6, verses 6 through 10, it says, but godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. I find that so interesting. It's so descriptive. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Not money. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And it's just so descriptive. It plunges people into ruin and destruction. And some people wander away from the faith because of their love of money, and they pierce themselves through with many pangs, the ESV says. Other versions say sorrows, pierce themselves through with many sorrows. We all know that when we get our fun toy, our new thing, the joy of that only lasts for a certain amount of time, and then it fades. So I actually want to share an example in an article that I read recently. There was a couple living in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is exactly where I live. They were talking about how they each make $200K a year, and then each husband and wife, and they were complaining over the fact that they could not make enough to live in the Bay Area. Now, understandably, all the tech is here. We've got Meta, we've got Google, we've got Adobe, we've got Apple, we've got you name it, we've got all the tech here. And so because of that, it brings in a lot of engineers and a lot of stuff like that. And it is really expensive to live in the Bay Area. It's one of the most expensive places in the United States to live. And this couple, they make now $400K a year. is what they are making, and they cannot. They said they're really struggling to live in the Bay Area. Why is this? Because they're not living below their means. Stephen and I live off of a fraction of that in this exact same area and can live just fine. So it's just a practical example of how when income increases and spending increases, how you can't maintain that life because you're not living within your means. You can't live, you can't save, you can't build your emergency fund, you can't do all those things because your spending increased with your income increase. So this couple is living paycheck to paycheck, barely surviving in the Bay Area because they are spending so much money and they're not living below their means. So the question then is, how can we avoid living paycheck to paycheck? Which brings me to my next item of budgeting. Stephen and I don't have a specific strict budget. We know our income and we know our general expenses, and we kind of have a loose budget around those things. As long as we are still saving, we actually set more of a certain amount that we want to save each year instead of focusing on the budget itself. But if you are struggling in living paycheck to paycheck, you need to have a strict budget. You need to have strict food budget, clothing budget, all the different expenses you need to budget out very specifically. I want to give you some practical questions that you can ask yourself if you are struggling to live below your means and struggling to budget, and when you are in the middle of a decision of, do I buy this or not? So I have quite a few questions here. I'll put them up on the screen for you guys as well. So number one, can I afford it? Is that something that fits within your allotment in your budget? Number two, do I actually need this right now? Is this a need or is this a desire? A need, let me clarify that what this is. A need is something that's needed for survival. We need food, we need clothing, we need a place to sleep. Those kinds of things are just our needs. A desire is like a strong feeling of wishing for something. Just because Apple comes up with a new iPhone, it doesn't mean I need to get a new iPhone. Do I need more clothing, or do I already have 10 pairs of jeans in my closet and do I really need another one? Or do I only have one pair of jeans in my closet and I actually do need more? Number three, how can I do this more cheaply? Or is there a cheaper way of doing this? Can you borrow from the library for books? Can you borrow from somebody else? Can you go to a secondhand store? Number four, what is the actual and real cost? When we're talking about sales, something that's 30% off is still 70% on. So if you have a $100 item, you're like, oh, but it's 30% off, you're still paying an extra $70 that you might not have otherwise, especially if it's a spontaneous purchase. Spontaneous purchases, definitely you need to sleep on that. Go away from the stores, get rid of Amazon, whatever it is, whether you're online shopping or shopping in a store, sleep on that decision and don't just spontaneously buy. Because remember, 30% off is still 70% on. And when you go home and reassess the next day, chances are you're not gonna have those same desires that you had when you saw it in the store. Number five, why am I buying this? Go to the heart. Is it emotional spending or is it a need? Go to the heart of why you are wanting to buy the item. Number six, is this the best price? Along with that, number seven, can I wait for a sale? Can you wait for a Black Friday sale? Do you need it right now? For those of you living in Canada, if you've been to Canadian Tire, you all know that you don't need to buy something at Canadian Tire right this second. If you wait a few weeks or a month or 2 months, there will be a sale on that item. At least in my hometown, Canadian Tire always had sales. It was constantly having sales. So you just look and wait for it to go on sale. So can you wait for a sale? And then the last question, number 8, how often will I use this? I'm not saying that you always have to be super strict about your budget, but if you are in debt, whether it's a mortgage or credit card debt, and you can't live below your means, you need to be really strict with your budget. And we'll get into it a little bit later in the ways that we can enjoy the money that God has given us. But if you are in debt, the time right now is to be strict on that. So the idea then is to just be super strict when your situation calls for it. Next up, we have our rainy day fund or our emergency fund. So as Christians, again, we're called to be intentional and wise with our money, and this includes planning for the unexpected. It doesn't mean we live in fear of the unexpected, but we can plan wisely. I think the general idea is to have 6 months to a year of your emergency funds available. So that would be what you are currently spending, all your expenses and what you're spending, and have that saved up so you can live for a year without having anything extra coming in your account. Proverbs 21 verse 5 says, "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty." And then in Genesis 41, it talks about Joseph, how he stored up food in the years of plenty and abundance, so there would be provision in the 7 years of famine. And that's Genesis 41 if you want to look that up. So next up, we have investing. And after we've built up our emergency fund, we can start investing and making our money grow over time. If you've never invested before, it doesn't have to be overwhelming or high risk. You can learn as you go. You can find financial advisors to help you. And just start with a small amount. Start with a small amount in a mutual fund or put it into gold. Just a note about gold. Gold is generally considered like a low risk investment with high yields over a longer period of time. No investment is risk-free, including gold, but it is important to note that you should invest in real gold, like actual gold. Because most people will invest in a piece of paper that just says you have been allotted X amount of gold. There's only a finite amount of gold in this world. And so there's going to be miles of people ahead of you in line with their slip of paper saying, "I am here for my gold. I want to take my gold." And because there's only a finite amount, not everybody's going to get it. And, if you invest in gold, there's always going to be somebody ahead of you in line. So make sure if you're investing in gold to invest in like actual gold. And my mind went to Matthew 25. I think that's verses, 14 through 30, where it talks about the master giving his servants different talents of gold. So the first one he gave 5 talents, the second one he gave 2 talents, and then the last servant he gave 1 talent. And the first two, the one who had 5 and 2 talents, went and traded, and they made double. They essentially invested. They traded and made the money work for them, and they got double. They made back double what their master had given them. What did the other servant do? He went and he hid that talent in the ground, and the master did not commend him. He was not happy with him because he didn't steward that money well. So let's steward well what God has entrusted to us. And then lastly, we have to choose cheaper vacation options. This is where enjoyment of our money comes in. God does not want us to just not enjoy money. He encourages us having rest and time away and being intentional with our family and friends and things like that. Stephen and I love to go camping. It's one way we can take vacations that make it a lot more cheap for us to go. And it doesn't mean you can't go to other countries or you can't explore like in the US. The US is so massive. There's so much to see just within the US. Again, we need to be faithful stewards. So one thing Stephen and I do is that we set a yearly budget for our travel, and we base our travel based on our yearly budget. And if we do have a more expensive trip coming up, like for example, Stephen and I in 2026, we're hoping to go to Peru. There's a missionary family in Peru. They're there for a few months of the year and then they're in the US. We are actually hoping to visit them and encourage them and see the work that they are doing in Peru. But that's going to be a more expensive trip. So for 2025, we had planned, okay, it's going to be a low travel year. We're not going to spend a lot on travel. We're going to do more camping to get away or just a quick weekend in an Airbnb instead of flying all over to who knows where, whether it's out of country because my family's in Canada or within the US. We're not going to travel. We are going to save that money so we can go to Peru next year. Now, it looks like we might not go to Peru. So practically, if you are looking at doing like a bigger trip and you have a budget, you could travel less the year before. Maybe you don't travel at all. You add your budget from one year to the next year so that you can do that one big trip. Like Stephen and I want to go to New Zealand someday. And that's going to be a really big trip. So you can do that. You could save some of your travel budget, or you can choose local getaways as well to help still create those memories, but be able to get away with your family and be intentional. Again, it's not about being super strict all the time unless you are in debt and you are living paycheck to paycheck. But the time for Stephen and I to do big travel plans is not right now. We are not at a point where we can fully enjoy the money. We're not at retirement, so we can't really enjoy all that money versus someone like my parents who can enjoy a lot more of what God has given them. I also want to give an example. Danny and Kyla are my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law, and they went to, it was a couple of years ago, but they went to Seattle on a day trip. They're actually also in the area here in California, and they found a really cheap flight early in the morning. They went to Seattle for the day and enjoyed time away from California, and then flew back again in the evening. And it was a way to just get away. They didn't have a hotel to pay for. It was just literally the flights and some food, and that was it. And that was just a really fun way for them to get away. Now, it's a little different in Europe because I know some of you guys are watching from Europe. The countries are so much smaller than the United States, so it's much easier to travel to a different country and see different things. So, take advantage of those cheap train tickets. Maybe it's an overnight train ticket, or I don't know, I haven't traveled much in Europe, but you can find those cheap ways of doing that. So just be wise in your enjoyment of the money that God has given you. All right, and then the Bible verse I have for that is Proverbs 24 verse 27. It says, prepare your work outside, get everything ready for yourself in the field, and after that, build your house. So this verse talks about working and wise planning before the enjoyment of the money that God's given. Well, thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope that these biblical principles and these tips really encourage you to steward your finances well and faithfully. You can live below your means. You can avoid debt, and you can build savings, and also you can enjoy your money that God has given you. If this video encouraged you, please share and subscribe. My heart is to help women walk with God in every area of their lives, including managing money. So please like it, please comment, share something that encouraged you. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.